1 year on from the release of Half-Life Alyx, and Valve is already heavily underway on their next major releases for the virtual reality platform. One of these endeavors, Citadel, is known to take inspiration from the popular asymmetric source engine mods such as Overwatch and Zombie Master, effectively taking an RTS and making the players both the commander and the units. Citadel, which we've covered extensively in a previous report, still receives consistent leaks in Source 2 titles, such as those in the final few updates to Artifact and Underlords. However, with the anniversary of Half-Life Alyx on Valve's hands, one of the game's directors, Robin Walker, has taken a few interviews discussing puff questions about the effects of the game and so forth. However, in a surprisingly lengthy interview conducted with TechRadar, Walker was asked, quote, "If you could turn any existing franchise, Valve-owned or not, into a VR game, what would it be?" To which, and remember what Citadel is known to be, Robin Walker responded with, quote, "I've never really thought about this. I'm very biased in that I really go into things that I just want, not because they'd be good VR games. Because of the game that I'm playing, you know. One of my favorite genres is squad-based tactical combat. I'm a huge XCOM fan. I'm a Battle Brothers fan. So without picking perhaps a specific game, more that genre, it'd be kind of interesting to see what you'd get if you tried to move one of those into VR," end quote. Now that would have been the place where I roll the intro as a punchline to get your attention. Robin Walker is effectively saying he'd love to work in an RTS in VR, which is effectively what Citadel is known to be. However, in that same demo resource file that brought all the Citadel leaks a few weeks ago, a few new things were added, all related to HLVR, being VR hand attachment handle and grenade states. These appear to be additions to the HLVR formula for an unknown reason, marked as HLVR/HLX. HLX. That's a new code name based on the framework built originally by Half-Life Alyx, but in a new ecosystem? HLX. Valve appears to be working on a follow-up to HLVR. Wow. The Tyler McVicker Discord server is where you get all of your news and information on everything going on in this brand ecosystem thing that I've built, I guess. You also have the Tyler McVicker Twitter account, the Tyler McVicker Twitch page, which is the best out of everything that I do, and you should really check it out. And I mean, you can support these videos and check out some of the merch. Links down below. I appreciate it. And hey, get subscribed. TF2 Cut Content Episode 4, talking about throwable weapons that were cut, coming up pretty soon. Get subscribed. Continuing with the TechRadar interview with Robin Walker, Walker was followed up with a question, quote, "From your gut feeling now, would you be a member of the squad, or would you be overlooking a battlefield, picking up pieces and soldiers and placing them down?" Walker responded with, quote, "That's a good question, and it's like the first one we'd start with. To go all the way back to an earlier answer I gave, I think that in the past, before Alyx, I would have approached that from a very VR-centric view, where you could say this about having this perspective over the battlefield that you don't normally have, and that would be really cool, being able to learn and look at your units and easily look around the battlefield. Now, I think post-Alyx, I would force myself to say, I know that stuff's true, but we'd sort of get that for free. So imagine you can't have it. It's always a very input-focused thing. I think one way to think of it is the perspective, the ability for the player to control the camera down in a very casual, natural way is powerful, but fundamentally not gameplay. It doesn't really add to the gameplay capabilities, like to the set of gameplay that we can do now that we couldn't do before. That's not quite true, but I think it's a good way to think that it's true as a designer, in that you don't get as much out of that as you think. The experience of being in the headset is actually not as valuable. What you get to do with tracked controllers is input fidelity that you've never had before, and so as a designer, I would lean heavily into that. We're jumping all over the place. There appears to be two virtual reality content teams moving simultaneously under Valve's umbrella, the long-known Citadel and the recently discovered HLX. Citadel is an entirely new set of game rules and a unique game all unto itself, and again, we've covered this at length in a prior video. However, HLX, which is being built off of the HLVR framework, would have to be a successor to Half-Life Alyx in almost every way. HLX is just Half-Life Alyx's mechanics, but improved, expanded, and iterated on. It would most likely have to be this way due to the project sharing a demo system as seen in this leaked file. That's problematic though, as we have two ongoing major projects at once, meaning all Source 2 related features that leak and updates can be for either game. So with that in mind, in a recent update to Dota 2 that brought massive help to new players to the game in light of the recent release of the Dota anime, we have references to dynamic footsteps, dynamic fog with direct interactions and light, new tactical enemies appearing to be mods for NPCs to take on, specifically hide and sentry NPCs, a dynamic wind system that has interactions with physics objects, object buoyancy properties, meaning how well an object floats in water, which in turn does confirm working water in Source 2. We have new types of lights, including something called barn lights. Further work on ropes and trails, a huge improvement and expansion to an object's mass in relation to user interaction. This mass system, by the way, references user drivable vehicles and NPC drivable vehicles, and new systems for storing cube maps. NPC moods, a system discovered and discussed at length in the past, has been further expanded, with a branching behavior tree appearing in a few references, with specific types of behaviors that can be attached to an NPC based on previous interactions and moods felt by that NPC. The full findings will be hosted down below. It's complicated, it's hard to fully understand without complete context, and there's a lot of lines to go through. So if you're able to parse anything new out of this information that I'm hosting in a Google Doc in the description, please leave a comment or just tweet at me. Lastly, it appears that the Valve teams are experimenting with NVIDIA Reflex in Source 2. However, what we have to go off of is sparse. All we know is that something is being experimented with. Before we close out, let's talk about this quote from an interview with Robin Walker and IGN, specifically talking about Half-Life. Walker told IGN, quote, "One of the reasons we felt like we were ready to start Alyx was that there was enough groundwork done on mechanics that we could focus now on content. How do we build a game on top of these mechanics? Because as much as developers love working on mechanics, they are really fun puzzles to solve. It's pretty clear through the history of video game sales that customers care about content a lot, far more than developers. They do care about mechanics that underline that content, but at the end of the day, they care about the content a heck of a lot more. So I think, if I had to guess, over the next few years, we are going to see other kinds of games come to VR and have that rich content in addition to just the mechanics. In between that, I would expect seeing things in the ways that we translated Half-Life into VR. We are now able to start seeing the ways in which VR could add to Half-Life. The reaction from people to the story and narrative choices that we made at the end of Half-Life Alyx have been incredibly energizing, and we are really excited to keep going there," end quote. I guess HLVR is dead. Long live HLX. Hopefully, it's a real blast from the past.